updates all the time on it because people want that and expect it. So.
Do you have someone dedicated just to the social media aspect these days?
Not so much. Well, we actually, in the station we do. We have a whole digital team, several people. And that's a big part of our business anymore, as it is with the Richmond newspaper and all other media outlets. Yeah, they kind of control the product, I mean, the distribution of the product and what we want out there, and there's so much involved in it that, and then they kind of tell each segment of the news department, here's what you need to do.
Have you found it more of a hindrance compared to the way it was 10, 15 years ago? In other words, now you have double the work because you've got to produce one product that's air quality, another product that's a 10-second soundbite,
Yeah.
or a small graphic that's...
It's it's a lot more work. I mentioned earlier, I'm going to work the day of Gaston. I thought, well, okay, well, it doesn't look like it's going to be so bad. That wouldn't be the attitude anymore because you kind of constantly update things. But also, information there's so much new information out there, new technology. So your question again was, I think I'm veered off that.
Yeah, well, basically, I was looking to understand what you guys do as a team to prepare for a storm. You have two at a time working, you plan shifts.
We plan shifts, like for next weekend, we may just kind of planted the seed today in the mind of my coworker Megan that next weekend, what if this thing does come up through Virginia, So you kind of plant the seed well in advance, like you do. You got advanced planning, big time. And then if there is, who's going to be around, who's be out of town, and that sort of thing. But we really, it's more of a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour a day thing. But in answer to the other point, do I find it that I like the fact that we're so busy now more of the time? I actually like that, even at my elderly age, aging age, I should say. And I get asked all the time, when are you going to retire? I hate to hear that. but that does
when
make,
you want to.
when I want to, it'd be a nice.
That's the answer.
Yeah, I say, well, a few years. I say I need the income. But
you're still having fun. That's what I tell people.
I still have fun. And actually, it's weird. I'll go home and sometimes complain. I say, what a day it's been. But the busier it is, the more I enjoy it. As you probably, I don't know. Faster it goes, and it's just very challenging. And I think it's fun. I think the business now is a lot more fun than it used to be, although it's more time consuming.
Do you all put your spin on the forecast, or you just take it verbatim?
We call Dominion Power. Or DEQ.
You don't roll the dice anymore?
We basically put our own spin on it. Yes, every meteorologist has their own kind of idea, and you as weather enthusiasts follow the weather and probably do your own forecasting. I'm sure you do for storm chasing and that sort of thing. We put our own spin on it. So, but as far as the hurricanes and stuff, I'm of the old school thought. The Hurricane Center knows better than I do, sitting here in Richmond, Virginia, what's going to happen with these storms. They have the hurricane hunters in there, and kind of use them as the key. And if like I was looking at various models for next week to go beyond the hurricane forecast and kind of take it a step further, how might this affect Virginia, even though it's not in the next 5 days? But and severe weather, the same thing. When they issue severe storm warnings, it's not up to us as TV people to say, this storm's severe. They haven't issued a warning yet for it, but it's severe. I think it's up to us to relay that information. There has to be a common source of information when life and property is on the line, in my opinion. And so that common source is the NOAA, National Weather Service, and for severe weather information. And they've actually over the years have gotten really into the new media platforms, very expanded into Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and everything else, and social media. And Mike Montefusco is going to be speaking at the the Chaser Con with the Weather Service. He posts a lot on Twitter, I see, and they post it on Twitter. I mean, everybody, you know, there's a lot of weather information out there, but I think the Weather Service is deeply involved in it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a twist on things, I guess. You sort of touched on this about issuing, when there's a severe, say there's a tornado warning. Or you're not going to, obviously, you're not saying NBC 12 is issuing a tornado warning, you're saying the National Weather Service issues something. And I would think, one reason obvious to me is, isn't there possibly some legal implications there too? Have you ever thought of that? Or is that?
Well, we can't issue a tornado warning.
But,
yet, right?
well, you say, but I'm just saying you could.
You could say, I see one on the
Yeah,
radar.
So we could say, yeah.
I see what looks like the signature.
Well,
on
yeah,
the
that
radar.
has been done, yes,
Well,
we
they do
do.
that all the time. They'll
Well,
say,
they
I
do.
expect a warning.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to say that, right? Okay.
But
we're not
your
gonna say-
question is legally, could they say
But
this
see, they've got
area
a
should
public
be under?
service license
Yes.
to broadcast those warnings, that's part of their.
Broadcasting
duty.
is different. I'm not saying about. I'm just saying that they want to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and say, okay,
This is gonna be a
tornado.
so that-
Yeah, is that overstretching the bounds?
Well, as Todd mentioned, you can see a signature or
I know,
something
you
on
see
the radar,
rotation.
but you can say that, but there's no warning at this, but we're watching it.
That's as far as you can go.
You
Yeah.
don't wanna say that's a tornado, or, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fine line.
Yeah.
That brings us to the topic of like, you know, naming winter storms as
Well,
well.
don't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
Any
sore
forecasts
spot.
on that?
Which I, you know, I don't like
I
that.
abhor it.
Huh?
I abhor it.
Yeah.
Horrible.
So it causes, about what I'm getting at with that is it causes confusion, like the Weather Channel names winter storms, it just causes confusion.
It's a marketing ploy.
It's a marketing ploy, and so, you know, fine, if they, wanna do it, fine, but, you know, I just think it confuses things, you know?
You know, Dan, I think the media, whether it's local media or national, I think they do a great job in taking the bull by the horn. They will say, hey, the models show this, but I disagree. And I think they'll also do the same thing with warnings, say, hey, this storm, we're not seeing the signature we used to. It's, you know, the county's under warning, but it looks like it's weakening, but this is the area to be
Yeah.
concerned. I think they do,
I
not only
agree,
locally,
but I'm
but
just
they
thinking
do.
in terms of the
But it would
possible
be
ramifications.
It would be interesting, I mean, what could they really say? They're not,
Last year, when we had those 9 tornadoes, and you were on, I was
September?
watching. Yeah, and I was watching you, and y'all were, reds and greens together. You were definitely talking a lot about that.
Well, there were warnings as well at the time, but we were also kind of saying, this looks like this could be another
Yeah.
one, you know?
It was very helpful.
So,
It was floating everywhere.
There
Yeah,
was
well, that
there
was
was a
a problem,
Florence.
there was too many of them.
Too many of them there.
Yeah,
But
that
you-
was really a
But
thing.
one, that line of them on the radar, it was just one right after another.
Yeah.
Do you have, for severe weather, do you have a preference, when you get down to your CAM models, do you have a preference which one you tend to like better?
No,
You know,
none of them.
None of them?
I don't know, I don't, for me, I like, and I know this is a severe weather crowd probably, I like winter storms, I like synoptic, big scale storms. But I'm not, that's what drew me to weather, I grew up in upstate New York, and I love snow and all that. That's what got me in the business was, I just kept religious records growing up, and a little notepad, still have them of every snow that hit my hometown, and newspaper clippings and things like that. And so I was a true nerd, as, weather nerd in terms of that. And I got into weather because of snow. So to answer your question, severe weather, I don't micromanage my forecasting for severe weather. I look at the model information, I look at the parameters and the soundings and all of these different things. But frankly, sometimes you look at the setup, as the Storm Prediction Center does, and they issue their convective outlooks and such. But these storms, you think of a storm that forms out of nothing, and within 8 hours, that storm is nothing again. All right, it's a cloud that develops, it's a severe storm, and then it's out and it's done. And so predicting that is a tricky proposition, even with the best computer guides and everything else. We have the high-resolution computer models from NOAA. We have this WSI in-house one that sometimes does well. So, yeah. But, some of the storms the past couple of weeks, the models are not.
But to answer your question of the convective models that are out there now, the short range models that are going, I think you've got to take an aggregate of all those and try to understand what they're showing you. They're not necessarily showing you exactly what's going to happen per se, but they'll give you a good picture. If you look at all of them, like even yesterday, they showed a scattered but weak area line trying to come through the northeast with its tail coming through central Virginia. You couldn't believe any one of them for a certain time, but you sort of use them to put together a picture that says, all right, something's going to happen, it's going to look like this. Every now and then they'll depict a squall line, and they'll depict it really well. But I think that the deal with the meteorologists these days is to take a look at all the available information and just sort of paint your picture of what it sort of looks like and what could happen.
So that gets to my question, because you're kind of hinting towards, there's a lot of data, but in putting all that together, this is still an art involved, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and I'm sure over your career, you've probably seen a transition, maybe there
Well, he
used to
used
be
to
more.
draw on weather maps from the back.
Yeah, that's how far, back 39 years, 40 years.
But I'm
I
wondering-
did, Todd, thank you.
I mean, do you consciously think of similar situations in the past and
Oh, yeah.
bring that knowledge to bear
absolutely.
on conditions that you see today?
Yeah.
Your experience?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you
have
do that
to.
a lot. I know you gotta go back and just.
You have to. I mean, you really have to, because you have to understand, recognize pattern, even in our air pollution business. Well, I mean, air pollution. Okay. It's the same thing. You look for, you recognize patterns, synoptic patterns, or that are conducive for the situation you're focusing on, be it severe storms that may cause power outages, widespread damage, or air pollution.
Yeah, this reminds me of something I
Or
saw
the
back in
derecho, when
Yeah.
you look for the Midwest, what's going on out there.
Right. You look upwind, so to speak.
And John, I know you do this on your own personal level. I know there are days you probably go outside, you look at the sky at 10 o'clock in the morning from your office and say, hey, this reminds me of that hot summer day when it was humid back in '86. And I mean, your own memory brings back we use maps. And we look at these maps and it reminds us of certain things. But for a lot of people that grow up looking at the sky, the smells, the feel, the humidity or whatever, what it's like to wake up in the morning, step outside and say, I smell snow.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
Oh,
think about those.
Now I'm dreaming about it.
Sorry.
How'd you end up here, loving snow?
I tell you, long and short of it, I got my first job in TD was Greenville, North Carolina. I loaded up a U-Haul from where I was in New York. Greenville, North Carolina, for a year. Came up to Richmond. My parents came down to visit Williamsburg. I took the Trailways bus, or wherever was the bus station on Broad Street. Took them, met them in Richmond. I'd never been to Richmond except driven through. And I remember looking at downtown Richmond and saying, wow, this is a big city. This is really cool. And then I thought, I wouldn't mind moving up here. And I ended up applying for a job, got a job. I happened serendipitously got a job up here a year later. And I consider this my big move back north. So that's how I ended up here.
What town in upstate New York were you from?
Delhi, which is up in the Catskill Mountains, northern fringe of the Catskill Mountains.
Way up
Rochester.
Well, not that far. It's down near
My wife's from
Binghamton.
Rochester, so it's
Rochester.
what further up.
So you were at NCT? What was the Greenville station?
At CT,
Yeah.
9 Alive. I don't know, I hope it's still alive.
I'm from Raleigh, so.
Oh, are you? Oh, yeah.
Do you have any particular,
Oh, yeah.
oh,
Go
do
ahead.
you have any particular snowstorms that were really memorable for you, especially ones that threw your curveball or?
Pre-Valentine's Day, 1983. And then 96, the so-called blizzard of 96. The two ones I remember more than anyone. And then the superstorm of 1993.
But you say curveballs, so that would be 2002, what was it, Dan? You and I were talking that night.
Oh, that,
It's January
That
first and
was-
second, 2002.
I was off, I was on vacation. That's where I got the
What about-
reputation of being gone on the big show.
January 25, 2000, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That one, they were way off with that, the model.
That's the one.
We don't remember the ones we're way off. Like December of,
I remember, that was coming up the coast,
That's the one
and
you
it was
were-
9
you're
o'clock
right.
at night, and I says, I'm glad I'm not a weather person tonight, because, you know, on the air or something. And
Yeah.
there was some lady that was on, and she went against the models on that, and she
She's
said,
right.
yeah, that's right.
That was-
And she's,
what was that?
Barbara Watson, the WCN out of DC.
You know, Barbara.
So she come out and said, she said this is wrong, and she said, got whole whole staffing for Northern Virginia. And
that's
good for
right.
her.
They-
Yeah.
Wakefield had gone, for that day, they had gone 1 to 3 for Richmond that day before, and 3 to 6 for the eastern areas. And, you know, the January 2000 storm, it's the big surprise event, and what happens is every time there's something that looks like it might go out to sea, and somebody thinks it's gonna come inland, always some weather person, weather hobbyist will say, oh, it looks like January 2000 all over again. They can use that as a thing, you know?
Baseline, yeah.
That's the baseline. And, you know, and
well, you know, she said a prayer after she left.
I remember '83 because it was the first big snow when I moved to Richmond. And I remember because I had a Toyota Tercel, it was my first new car, I know. And I thought, okay, this car will get through anything, front wheel drive, lightweight, and from upstate New York, I figured, I can drive right. And so I remember that car, I got it stuck in front of my house, and had to get a ride to work. And then a guy at work, I don't know if there's the co-anchor, her husband had a Jeep. He said, I'll get your car out. So that night he took me home, and he was going to give my car a little nudge. He rammed the rear end of my car so bad it was almost totaled. So that's why I remember the 1983 snowstorm. And then the '96 one I remember, that's a little more recent. But
Do you ever get a chance to like compare notes or shoot the breeze with your counterparts in other stations? Like, hey Zach, let's go have a beer and talk about the mesoscale forecast. You know?
Rarely. I'll see, Zach occasionally at the gym or something like that, and nice guy, and Bernier,
There's
John
no
Bernier.
secret society of meteorologists.
I think that's us.
Yeah, that's real. I walked in here, I didn't know if there was gonna be hats.
secret handshake.
Secret handshake.
Their issue is they work the same hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't see each other much. We used to go to meet conferences together and stuff, but that happens less and less.
Actually, I got a quick point about that to kind of go off that question. Maybe AMS can be that kind of form. Because I remember when I was in Iowa, we had an NWA chapter that did like a broadcast tape swap, where meteorologists even from different stations would get together and they could talk about, what works on air, what doesn't, communicating risk, and kind of give each other, what do I want to say, critiques. What do they call it? What's the nice word for criticism?
Positive,
Constructive feedback, yeah.
Oh, that's an idea. Now, NWA has always been more broadcast oriented, and so that'd be natural that they would be more doing that. But I mean, if that's why I asked initially, are there any other TV people or broadcasters involved in our organization here? And so,
They're on our email list.
yeah, I see the emails all the time too. So I'm like that.
It's the timing.
Yeah.
It is timing, but it would be good if we all got together more in terms of the broadcast community. But that's one little niche of the weather business anymore. There's private forecasting, which is huge. Anybody young coming into the business now and wants to get into the TV business, I'll say go into weather. There'll always be weather. But you have to be interested in it. You cannot get into it if you're not interested. It'll be a failure. So.
I have a question, one last question maybe, about, I think, how can I say this? You, Todd, myself, maybe a few others, are of a certain age, if you will, where when you were you're studying meteorologist, and I emphasize the word studying here, and you learned electricity equations. And you learned all the good things that come with that. And now, there's been more of a shift to broadcasting weather. You see where I'm going with this?
Yep.
I wonder, do you have any thought on that? Is that just a change because of media, or what's
I
what's
think
the
it's
cause of
always
this?
been there. It's always been there. Al Roker is not a meteorologist.
That's part of it. Yeah, not
He's-
having the technical background.
Right, and Al Roker was I went to school in Syracuse, Lemoyne College in Syracuse. I always say Syracuse, but I didn't go to Syracuse. I went to Lemoyne. But I watched Al Roker do weather on TV in Syracuse. And I knew at the time he wasn't a meteorologist, but you know, okay, he wasn't a meteorologist, but at the time there were a lot of just weathercaster types. So I went through a period of time where I thought, this is not good. We're getting away from the science and stuff, but you know, that's the way the business is. It is trending that way. There's just more and more. Mississippi State does a degree program for broadcast meteorology. But I do like the math background. I joked at work, I want to start my little talk here with a math joke because I love math. I was a math major originally. And so
I started as well, but after taking the same course 3 times.
that's better than my joke. I was going to say that. My joke is why is 6 afraid of 7 because 7 ain't 9. Yeah, kid joke. You know.
Yeah.
That's my math joke.
Yeah.
But I told that at work before I came, and they cracked up like nobody heard that.
That's because I don't have kids.
At a TV
But
station,
you're the
you do
boss,
communication meetings. Get math jokes to them, like, wow, math jokes.
I saw a great T-shirt at work. 5 out of 4 people have trouble with math.
I saw that. I saw that online. There's memes for everything. I've seen that. So math, I think, is just wonderful. I just love math. I'm not that great at it, but I love math. And it's a perfect part of meteorology too, as you were talking about equations and things like that.
If you go somewhere like Penn State, Penn State, graduated in '04, I had all that. They haven't changed. I go back every year.
Yeah.
Visit classes. I think, yeah, there's other options now.
There are.
If you don't like the math and you just want to be on TV or whatever, you have alternatives that maybe you didn't have in the past.
I was thinking more along the lines of people going into, yeah, I agree 100%. I was thinking of people going into on-air forecasting. I mean,
Well, even just forecasting in general.
yeah, true, but I'm
No one's
although I'm not sure about-
stopping you from setting up your own site in front
Oh,
of a
right.
T-shirt.
But I'm-
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was pretty good. You even had me rolling there. That was good.
But seriously,
Does your T-shirt say weather?
But no,
and I think it's, I fixed my own air conditioner before. Google's wonderful.
Right.
You know, now, I'm not gonna go to somebody who studied Google to do a heart surgery. But there are certain things I think we all think, you know. But you're right, there gets to be something about the quality, as you said, you were concerned. So when the early 80s got here, there were only a handful of certified meteorologists, so to speak, on the air. Handful.
right.
My buddy Fischel, you, Renier, a couple others in the eastern US. So people started stepping in there, it got better, and we started getting, but in the 90s, 2000s, we started stepping back away. It was more, well, I got an internet degree. But I also think that there's also a handful of people, like you confessed, and I know Dan did it, I did the same thing, journal. Being a nerdy little grade school and middle school person, journaling weather and keeping tabs of things, and it's in your blood. And I don't know if you're gonna see that these days.
Yeah, I wonder about that now.
I mean, I could be
I
wrong,
don't
Jeff, I
know.
mean,
I'm younger.
There are a few of them out there, I think.
speak to me, I mean, do you know a lot of people that, is it that much in your blood that you,
When I have a number of high schoolers who will come in shadow or whatever for a day, a lot of it is they're looking at stuff online, which it's hard for me to relate to because I didn't have all the access to all the
Right.
novels and stuff online when I
Right.
was in high school. So I think, maybe they do less of that now, less of the records. I got into, because I liked snowstorms growing up in Pennsylvania. We had thunderstorms, we had a garden, we had to collect rainwater, we'd sit on the porch switch out the buckets to collect the rainwater and wash it.
Well, it's not necessarily getting so involved you're journaling it, but it's just wanting to get into it for the science.
Yeah. I mean, weather's, you know, if you're really into it, I remember as a kid trying to predict the weather and all that
Yeah.
stuff. If you're really into it, you might know as much as a guy that went to college for
I agree.
4 years.
I agree.
So, you know.
With you, in the TV media, talking about, sometimes the guys that have all the experience in the technology and the math in the past versus now, but you also have, in the media, you have the marketing, the front office kind of people, you know, at least on the news desk, telling you what to say, how to say it, dramatize it, stuff like that. Does any of that feed into the weather broadcast?
Not so much. They listen, actually, now it's more like they want our feedback. How should we frame this? And yeah, there is a bit of, you know, every story has a headline.
Yeah.
You know, the headline gets your attention, then you get, once you got somebody's attention, then you give the information. So part of that is getting people's attention. You might see that in the framing of a story or framing of a weather story in a newscast. They'll, you know, headline it rather spectacularly, maybe, but then we'll kind of say, okay, here's what the information is. But we want your attention, then we give you the.
So they don't kind of try to damp down the technology a lot?
No. I think, you know, weather is one of the strongest, there's a lot of respect for in the news business, there's a lot of respect for our autonomy, you know, in the weather department. It's not like any other part of the news business.
What do you find some of those interesting changes as far as the mechanisms of the TV production and translating the forecast to, I mean, your forecast to putting it up on the TV from when you started to now? I mean, what's better, what's worse, or what do you, just some of the differences?
Biggest difference is the graphics presentation. You know, it's clear presentation of information. I started with a drawing on a board, you know, 40 years ago. Can't do that now. Wouldn't do that now. But then the technology in terms of the model forecasting we can show on the air, and here's what the models are showing X, Y, Z down the road, and I just think the presentation, the way we can present the information is so much clearer now. That's the way I think there's been great improvements. There's been great improvements in the forecasting skill too. I'm not talking about myself necessarily, just because we have better computer modeling and everything else. And intuition too, going through experiencing storms, sometimes you kind of have an idea what's going on.
You talked about the computer, talked about the supercomputer that gathers information over the time. I think the supercomputer get better on the long because they gather more data for the past. Each day they give it more reliable.
Yeah.
Is that right?
The forecast is only as good as the information put in the beginning.
The supercomputer gathers the data in the past. Got old data and up to turn we gather all information, had the storm track. So I guess the computer can understand better.
They're faster computers, and they get updated more frequently, every hour. You're ingesting new information because, you know, every particle of air out there is in a different position now than where it was, you know, a zillionth of a second ago. So to initialize that data correctly, you need to run the programs more often, and faster computers recover. So that's why you got faster computers. New information is put in, the forecast changes, is updated. That's why the high-res models for thunderstorms and stuff will give you better information with each model run closer to when it happens.
I think the program had to keep updating to the computer.
Yeah.
So
you keep updating.
You put in and make it correction.
Everything you put in there, if it's wrong, it's going to be translated 100 times worse in the forecast. So you want that data to continue on. So, It's getting kind of dim in here, so I think my time is probably. Unless you want to stay all night.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
My dad wants to.